Are you fascinated by the idea of a man who could predict the future with astonishing accuracy? Look no further than the brilliant mind of Nikola Tesla. Despite living in the late 1800s and nearly 1900s, Tesla was so advanced in his thinking and technological innovations that he made predictions that still hold true today. From wireless communication to renewable energy, join us as we delve into the mind of a man who truly saw the future. It's been more than a century and a half since one of the most intelligent people who have ever lived was born in what was formerly known as the Austrian Empire. Even after more than 160 years have passed, Nikola Tesla is still considered to be one of the most influential figures in the history of science. He is famous for having a brilliant mind, which not only enabled him to come up with an extraordinary number of innovations, but also gave him the ability to foresee what will happen in the future. In a number of interviews, he offered a number of forecasts regarding the nature of humanity in the 21st century, and in many of them, he was spot-on accurate. In Liberty magazine on February 9 of 1935, there was a piece that was published that was unique in comparison to the other interviews that had been conducted with the Serbian inventor, because this particular interview had been signed by him. Although it is unclear where the article was written, it appears to have been a conversation between Nikola Tesla and his friend George Sylvester Virag. Many people are of the opinion that it could have taken place in the residence of Virag himself, which Nikola was known to frequently visit. The thing that makes this interesting is that all the way through the lengthy lines, Nikola Tesla reviews a series of predictions about the 21st century, about how he believed the context will be at that time. In many of them, the Serbian inventor is not even remotely related to what is taking place today, but in others, he appears to have had the voice of a prophet. Chapter 1. Concern for environmental hygiene. Tesla had the foresight to anticipate the increasing significance of concerns regarding hygiene and physical culture, and he went so far as to forecast the establishment of a department in the United States government that would be solely responsible for such activities. The Environmental Protection Agency was not established until 25.5 decades after Nikola Tesla made his statement on the matter. The fields of hygiene and physical culture will be acknowledged as legitimate educational and administrative specializations. In the cabinet of the President of the United States, who is in office in the year 2035, the Secretary of War will be overshadowed by his or her counterpart, the Secretary of Hygiene or Physical Culture, who will hold a position of much greater significance. Our children and grandchildren will find it unfathomable, are already polluted to the extent that they are in today's day and age. Just as we find it hard to imagine living without indoor plumbing, our water supply will be much more carefully supervised, and only a deranged individual would drink water that has not been sterilized. Chapter 2. Critic of Fossil Fuels. Nikola Tesla was a man far ahead of his time, vehemently arguing that the burning of fossil fuels, particularly through the thermodynamic process, was not only wasteful, but also barbaric. He was especially concerned about coal, which was more prevalent than natural gas and oil during his era. These later two energy sources, although slightly less harmful, were rapidly expanding in use. Despite Tesla's dire warnings, society became heavily reliant on fossil fuels as government investments and taxpayer subsidies made them affordable and widely accessible. At the same time, renewable energy sources like wind and solar were left unsupported, placing them at a significant disadvantage. Tesla was acutely aware of the problems associated with coal mining, including the dangers and health risks faced by miners working deep underground. While oil and natural gas extraction were somewhat safer, these energy sources were still finite resources. Tesla was remarkably prescient in understanding that fossil fuel-based resources would eventually run out. Long before that happened, however, the cost of extraction would surpass the revenues generated, making the industry economically unfeasible. On top of this reality, Tesla recognized that numerous externalized costs were not being accurately accounted for. Many of these costs, such as pollution, environmental degradation, and public health concerns, were shifted from the companies responsible for extracting fossil fuels onto the broader shoulders of humanity. Now that we fully understand the root cause of human-induced climate change, the trillions of dollars in costs associated with global warming caused by the burning of fossil fuels can also be added to the overall tally. Even when these societal costs are ignored, the fossil fuel industry continues to receive massive taxpayer subsidies, artificially propping up an economically feasible industry. If the true cost of these externalities were factored into a transparent free market, the lack of economic viability of fossil fuels would be as evident today as it was to Tesla more than a century ago. Another often overlooked cost is the impact on national security. Regions like the Middle East, Russia, Venezuela, and other areas of geopolitical tension are globally significant sources of fossil fuels, particularly oil and natural gas. As one Tesla researcher aptly noted, using an analogy that resonated with Tesla's interest in pigeons, if you put all the bird food in one place, the birds fight each other for it. If you spread it out for all to eat, there is no fighting. The limited and geographically clustered sources of fossil fuel resources undoubtedly contribute to a similar outcome. While many at the turn of the 20th century were preoccupied with exploiting coal, iron, aluminum, and drilling for oil, Tesla was already contemplating the limits of these endeavors. Rather than consuming resources that were both dirty and finite, Tesla believed that we needed to prioritize conservation, whatever our resources of primary energy may be in the future. Tesla wrote, "We must, to be rational, obtain it without consumption of any material." He firmly believed that natural, renewable resources of energy could eliminate the need for coal, oil, gas, or any of the other common fuels. Tesla's forward-thinking approach serves as a stark reminder of the importance of investing in sustainable and renewable energy sources. As a visionary, he urged society to obtain energy without consuming materials, emphasizing the need for a more sustainable and environmentally responsible approach to power generation. In a world facing the consequences of climate change and resource depletion, Tesla's wisdom is more relevant and urgent than ever. Chapter 3: The future will embrace education. Tesla had the vision that the future of humanity would be more focused on learning than fighting, and while he was partially correct in predicting that the results of scientific research would be accessible to a wider audience, he was, unfortunately, not correct in predicting that people would be less interested in fighting. He claimed, "In today's world, the most civilized nations spend the greatest proportion of their income on military spending while devoting the least amount of money to educational spending. This order will be flipped by the time we reach the 21st century. Than to die fighting for one's country on the battlefield, the establishment of new scientific truths will be of greater significance in the future than the bickering of diplomats." Even the newspapers of our day are beginning to treat the discovery of new philosophical concepts and scientific findings as newsworthy events. The newspapers of the 21st century will give crime stories and political controversies a mere stick on the back pages, but the proclamation of a new scientific hypothesis will lead to the front pages of these newspapers. Chapter 4: Anxious about the emergence of robots. It would appear that the moral and social conundrum that arises from the presence of robots has been a topic of discussion for centuries. Tesla had the premonition that humanity would only be able to adapt to the intelligence of machines to the extent that we were able to master them. It was almost as if he were a prophet when he predicted that machines, rather than humans, would be doing the majority of the heavy work sooner rather than later. Because we have not yet completely adjusted to living in an age dominated by machines, our civilization is currently undergoing a period of upheaval as a result. The answer to our issues is not in destroying the machine, in becoming an expert user of it. There is a multitude of tasks that are still carried out by humans today that will eventually be carried out by automatons. In the research facilities of several universities across the United States are currently engaged in the process of developing what has been referred to as a thinking machine. This turn of events was something I had anticipated. I constructed the robots. It is common knowledge that robots exist in the modern world, but the underlying concept has not been developed sufficiently. In the 21st century, robot labor will replace the forced labor of slaves, which was common in ancient civilizations. There is no reason why the majority of this should not occur in fewer than 100 years, liberating humanity to pursue its highest aspirations. Chapter 5: Dry Spells and Raging Blazes in the Woods. It would appear that Nikola Tesla had a fairly positive outlook. He was optimistic that the planet's problems, such as droughts and wildfires, would be solved with the help of human intelligence, and that these problems would be brought under control. Unfortunately, with regard to this prediction, he did not get it right at all, and on the contrary, the egotism of humans triumphed over intelligence. Long before the dawn of the next century, all devastating droughts, forest fires, and floods will have been put to an end, thanks to the methodical reforestation of land and the scientific management of the world's natural resources. Every home will have access to low-cost energy through the widespread use of hydropower, and this energy will be transmitted over long distances, eliminating the need for households to burn fuel. It is imperative that, as a daily struggle for survival becomes less urgent, progress be made along spiritual rather than material lines. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more fascinating topics and discussions. See you in the next video.